So for today's lesson, we are going to be learning about a specific literary device. And before we get into that any further, do you remember what a literary device is? It's okay if not, I'll go ahead and explain it. A literary device is basically a technique the author uses to communicate with the audience in a very efficient way to communicate a certain message. And it's the same as a carpenter might have tools in his toolkit. An author has literary devices as the tools in their toolkit. Basically, a literary device is a way of communicating a message that has worked so many times for authors and has worked basically in literature since the beginning of time, and it's such a time-honored thing that these ways of communicating messages to an audience have become tools or literary devices that so many authors use, and that we've come up with names for them because they get used so often that it's easier just to identify them by name. And they're since I was just talking about how they've been used in literature since the beginning of time, why don't I talk about this specific literary device that I'm going to be telling you about today? Why don't I talk about that using Shakespeare's Othello, something very fundamental in literature, obviously. But that said, it's totally okay if you do not remember the plot of Othello or do not know the plot of Othello or not familiar with it, because I will give you a very, very quick, so this is obviously not the entire story. I will give you a very quick version of what Othello is just so we can talk about the literary device we'll be talking about today. So Shakespeare's Othello is basically about Othello and Desdemona, his to-be wife. They want to get married, and the only problem is Othello's friend Iago, who is his military subordinate. Iago is very mad that Othello promoted somebody else to a higher military rank over Iago. And since Iago's really mad about this, he thinks, well, how can I just ruin Othello's marriage, and how can I ruin his life? Because Iago is just such a nice guy. So basically what Iago does is he concocts this crazy plot that involves stealing Desdemona's handkerchief and planting it with some other man, Cassio, to make it look like Desdemona is cheating on Othello, which of course she is not. So Iago comes up with this crazy plan. And so the literary device that I will be talking about today, just briefly, is dramatic irony. And dramatic irony is basically when the audience knows something that the characters do not know. So it's sort of like if you've ever watched a horror movie and you're screaming at the TV, no, don't go in there, don't go in the haunted house, leave, don't go upstairs, that's where the monster is. But the character doesn't know that. Only you, the audience member, know that. So you know something that the character does not. That's what dramatic irony is. And so in Othello, an example of dramatic irony then is every time that we hear Othello say how honest and nice Iago is, we know, no, he's not nice at all. He's trying to make it look like your wife is cheating on you and he's trying to ruin your life. But Othello is always talking about what a nice, honest man his best friend Iago is. And so, of course, you can see the dramatic irony there because Othello does not know what is going on at this point. He does not know the truth. But we do, the audience, because Iago uses these things called asides